Watch this. No way!
Hello and welcome back to the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Fitzpatrick, and today I'm joined by Sam Williams.
Hello.
And Tour Pro, coach, commentator, and all-round good guy, Zane Scotland. Zane, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you, guys. How are you all?
Yeah, good.
Doing okay. Yeah, very delighted by the news that golf is back on in a couple of weeks. So, starting to sharpen the tools and get ready to get back out there and get playing.
Yeah, I think we've all played some good rounds in our heads over the last couple of weeks. So, now there'll be a little bit of anxiety and nervousness over that first swing, having not hit a ball for a month.
I've been in great in November. I've been in absolutely brilliant there. Shot 63 last night in my head round our local track. Yeah. Let it go a little bit on the last few, but I thought, without leaving the comfort of my own armchair, 63 gross was pretty good in my head. I was quite happy.
Solid, that.
Yeah.
Solid, yeah. But to tell the secretary, get the handicap down.
Yeah, new system as well, of course. That will be so. Not only a golf course is we're going to have insanely high, unrealistic expectations when we go back, but we'll actually be able to potentially put in a card first round back, which is scary stuff. But anyway, rolling into your story, Zane. So you got exceptionally good at golf very, very quickly, playing in the Open at the age of 16 when Sam and I were just doing our GCSEs at that point, or thinking of things that were totally insignificant in comparison. So could you, just for the benefit of our listeners, give us an insight into like how you got started in the game and more than anything, how you got that good so quickly, really?
Yeah, so I started the game when I was like kind of 11 or 12. My dad had started at the same time as I had, so we both got the golf bug very quickly, and we're going to the driving range. And my first 2 years of playing golf would have been going to the driving range 2-3 nights a week, putting on the carpet in the living room, being moved out to the hall because the carpet got worn out. Then, chipping in the garden if there was daylight, to playing golf before school. So we get up and tee off at like 5:15 in the summer, play 9 holes, back breakfast on to school. It was in a way, if you were running that 10,000 hours, with a crash through 10,000 hours pretty quickly. To which then took me to teeing up in the Open Championship when I was 16. So from kind of start to teeing up in a major, I had like 5 years, which seems like a really short time. But the amount of golf in that time, there was loads. So it was probably 10, 12 years crunched into that 5 years. So there's a lot of chat now about performance practice, and quantity and not quality and so forth. Quality, not quantity. But in that early stage, quantity is important to really get that work in. So and that kind of led me into I'd just done my GCSEs, and then I was just started sixth form college. Was doing BTEC in a subject I can't even remember like now. I think it was business studies, but I was very much like just literally just ticking boxes. The only reason I was interested in school from about 14 years old was someone told me if you have good grades, you have the option to go to college in the States. So that was my only motivation. Other than that, I had no thought in my head that I was not going to have a career in golf, really.
But in 2 years, like the golf bug's gripped you really hard there, hasn't it, Zane? Where did that come from? Like, is it just you? Because it was with your father a lot, wasn't it, playing golf? So was that just enjoying spending time with your dad and playing a lot of golf, or were you just hooked by the game itself from the start?
Initially, it started by trying to spend time with my dad because I used to play football. He would come and watch my Saturday team, Sunday team. Then all of a sudden, he wouldn't come to the Saturday because he would play golf. And then all of a sudden, he was then playing golf Saturday and Sunday. Then my sister or my mum was taking me to football. So initially it was like, I just want to hang with my dad. So, we're going caddy for him. So I gave up football on the Saturday because that team wasn't quite as good. I can go and knock about with my dad on the Saturday. And then I remember my first golf shot. And from that moment, I was hooked and I was in. And then it just fit me perfect as a person, because I've not been an was never an overly sociable person. I've always found football really frustrating because I've never struggled to have drive in the sport that I've chosen. But I found it really difficult to deal with someone else not putting 110% in something that I wanted to do. So then along came golf, and golf was like kind of looking around. And at this point, as we go on, you need a team and so forth. But at this point, I'm thinking, are you telling me I just need like some clubs and a ball, and the rest is me? Like, this is my dream. Like, there's only I've only got myself to answer for here. So that was me hooked, really, because I didn't need. Yes, it was great to play socially, and I enjoyed playing against my dad. But essentially, it just means that for 3 hours after school, I could just go out into the garden and chip and make a little hole. Make my own little hole on the slope and chip down to the end and then putt or whatever it was. And and golf really ticked that box for me. It's just didn't have to wait for anybody else to go and do it, which is great. If you're going to go and play football, there's only so many times you can kick that ball at the wall for it to come back. That was my life doing that. And all of a sudden had golf, which was golf just gives you so many opportunities in so many different areas and so varied. It's kind of never ending, isn't it?
And when you look at that now, I mean, with the benefit of hindsight, you being like a really well respected coach who coaches a lot of top players yourself, and having gone through the process of not only playing in the Open but going and having a successful European Tour career, when you look back at that sort of 14-year-old you, do you look at the way you were kind of like playing and practicing and just think, wow, like although I was actually just doing it for the kind of intrinsic joy that I was getting out of the game, I was actually going about it in a pretty like effective manner from like a sort of performance standpoint as well. And when you kind of got into, I guess, a little bit more coaching with county sides and maybe a bit of one-on-one stuff, did that just sort of really kind of allow you to hit the higher levels of the game pretty quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I was probably quite fortunate in that the environment that I played and practiced in and trained in really from when I was young was very good. My golf club had a good junior section, of which I think 11 of our generation went on to play professional golf or be professional golfers. Whether I think 3 of us played on the main tour, others played mini tours, and a couple become PGA professionals. So that but I know that wasn't. I mean, there was probably a little bit of design. My dad tried to get me into a good club with plenty of juniors, but to be honest with you, we tried to get into all the clubs, and everyone said no because I was too young. You had to be 14 to be. Yeah, you had to be 14 years old. You had to be 14 years old to join the golf club, and the club I was playing at was a municipal club, which was like about 45 minutes away down in Kent. And they just didn't have a rule about juniors, didn't have a junior section, so I was able to play. But all the local clubs, we wrote letters, and they all just said no, it wasn't old enough. And then the one club that I did end up joining, the junior organizer, his son had played on the tour, and you get called in for the meeting, and you're an 11-year-old kid, and you have to wear suit and tie to go for an interview, with these 3 old geezers, and they asked me a few questions, and I was, I can't remember what the questions were, but I just remember him saying to me, saying, if anyone asks you, tell them you're 14. And I was 11. So I'm like, yeah, right. So that was it. If he hadn't been there, I would have been out in the wilderness as such, really, and for a couple more years, which is mental when you think about it now. And then I guess, kind of by luck, I was kind of decent anyway. So then I was always competing with like kids which were essentially probably a bit older than I was. And so because golf takes over your life, like you just find a way to compete. And everyone was very good. And, we got down to single figures, and there was plenty of tournaments. We had lots of matches against other clubs. So we got to experience different courses as well. So I think quite early on, between the age of, say, 12 and 15, I was quite rounded, really. I played on all different types of courses. I played in junior opens. I had someone to compete against if need be, of a weekend. Summer holidays were just like, going at each other on the putting green, chipping comps, one club challenges, it was just everything. And all those things, when you look back, you go, yeah, that was being able to go out for a 1 or 3 club challenge for 5 holes in the evening stands me in really good stead because I'm now a good shot maker. I know what to do to make things happen. I wasn't going out there thinking, right, to be a pro, I've got to become a good shot maker. You just a product of your environment, really, aren't you?
I remember playing so much junior golf, and you do look back on it and you think, yeah, I mean, I remember thinking, God, my short game was so good when I was about 16. And then it was no wonder, because I was basically playing 36-hole junior opens, and then I'd spend about 3 hours on the chipping area with my mates for afterwards, and my mum be sort of waiting on the car park to collect me. It's outrageous. But the flippancy of the way you talk that through then, Zane, of going 12 to 15, I was playing sort of, against some older lads, and, they were in a bit further, and I was playing a few junior opens, and then you wind it on 12 months and you stood there, Carnoustie, 1999. Like, that is outrageous. So just tell us a little bit about that experience. That must have been surreal, right?
Yeah. So I entered so there's pre-qualifying and then there's final stage qualifying to get into the Open, and it's I can't remember how many spots get through the first stage. At the second stage, in those days, it was like 8 or 10 spots, and the qualifying used to be on the Sunday and the Monday, taking you into the week of the Open. So Tuesday morning, you're on the range at the Open Championship. But if we rewind to the first stage, so I was 16 years old. I had my pal caddying for me, who was 14, and we arrived for a practice round at Romford Golf Club in Essex. And I've got my pencil. He's carrying my pencil bag, and you go in, and it was amazing because it was the first time we showed up, and they're like, "Oh, here's your book," and it was like the professional book with that someone's gone and made and put all the yardages from every hump on and every slope, and I'm looking at that thinking, "Oh, that's unbelievable, this." and so I've gone and showed my pal, my mate Mikey, and he's got the one at the pro shop. Like, it's not a stroke saver, but it's something like that. It's in colour. It all looks nice on the pictures. And I said, "Oh, look at this amazing book they've given me." And he opens it up and he goes, "Oh, well, that's rubbish." I'm looking at him going, "What do you mean it's rubbish? Like, it's got everything on there. Like, this is the best thing we've ever seen. It's a professional yardage book." And he went, "Yeah, but look at it. It's not even in colour." Like, and then so we go to the first tee, and there's a guy from Titleist standing there, and he's standing there and he's going, "Here's your balls, here's your I'm trying to think what we've been using then, Titleist Professionals probably, and here's your gloves." And you're like, "But I haven't got any money." And it's like, no, like, these are yours. Like wow, and be around it and be surrounded by assistant pros and other professionals. You think, okay, this is cool. Like, these guys are all, this is a different level. Anyway, so I was able to end up qualifying, but getting a reserve spot. So I got like a 30th reserve at the final stage. But I'd been told that, that probably gets in, which it does. Like, about 40 reserves get in. So I kind of went up to the qualifier with a couple of friends, one of them who had qualified. And I was practicing at a course called Downfield, and because that's where he had qualified, my pal. So I'd been there for a couple of days, and then on the night before the first round, I got the phone call saying, "Zane, you're in." Sergio Garcia had won the Irish Open, which exempted him into the Open Championship. It was when he first came on the scene. So essentially, I took Sergio's spot and got to play with Robert Allenby and another guy called Stuart Smith. Stuart Smith, that was also a qualifier. Robert Allenby was in because he was Robert Allenby, basically, because he was a good player. And there probably there's a bit of fortune that they say, "Oh, and the course that you're at is the course you've been practicing at for 2 days." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool. That's great." So, on you go. When I look back, I had a really good friend, a guy called Michael Lunt, who essentially became captain of the R&A in his later years. He's passed away now. He was a Great Britain Island selector.
He's a member of our home club.
Michael Lunt's a member of Blackwell.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So he was a member at Walton Heath. I played at Walton Heath, and he was always really good to me. And he was the delegate at Downfield. So now I look back and go, yeah, he's manufactured that I got that course. But at the time, this is lucky. But there were things going to play.
You're just like, oh, well, that's worked out okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
And then the whole qualifying experience from there was quite. I remember probably more of that than my actual playing in the Open, just because I was playing with Robert Allenby, and I remember I skied it off the first hole. There were loads of people watching us, and I was nervous, and you can't feel your arms, and I didn't have any practice balls because you had to bring your own balls. I didn't have any, so I was like, okay, so I would just a couple of putts and away you go. Skied it off the first, made a par, got round to about this, and then on the fourth hole, he got cross at me and had a go at me because I'd walked on his through line, and I'm like, what's a through line? Look at my dad, like, what's a through line? Never heard of that thing. You know what I mean? I'm a kid, but he's a big time tour player. But luckily I was young enough to be like, you're used to people telling you off when you're that age. So you're like, whatever. It didn't bother me at all. Now it might be a bit different. You end up getting a bit of a scrap on the 50 or something. And then actually I kind of semi-shanked a wedge shot on the 6th hole.
It's not sounding good this so far, Zane. It's not sounding like an exhibition in ball striking.
It's amazing, right? Exactly, right? So, and this is the bit I think we can all relate to. So I shanked it, right? So I semi-shanked it on the 6th hole, this wedge shot. And it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because then I was just like, well, doesn't get any worse than that, does it? Like, come on, like, we've got nothing to worry about now. Anyway, chipped and putted, and then proceeded then to have the next, 30 holes of my life, really. Kind of made everything I looked at, and kind of didn't look back. And yes, I was nervous, but I wasn't thinking about the gravity of qualifying for the Open. I was just nervous because I was playing golf, because I was just playing alongside Robert Allenby. I wasn't overly thinking. I wasn't at the time thinking about getting into the Open. Previous to that, maybe a bit of naivety, or maybe how you should think. It was my going into it. I was like, yeah, I can qualify for the Open. I've only got to shoot under par 3 times. Pre-qualifying, you've got to shoot under par. If you shoot 36 holes both under par, you probably got a chance of getting in. That was my actual mindset. But when I was playing, I wasn't thinking that. I was obviously nervous from the situation I was in, playing alongside a top tour pro. I was nervous from that point of view. But yeah, and then and bang, and then you're in. I think I finished
the next day you head down to Carnoustie.
Yeah, you're there. I mean, I finished 4th. I remember watching Paul Lawrie hole a 40-footer across the last green to get in on the mark.
So he qualified downfield as well, did he?
He qualified downfield. He binned it from 40 feet on the last to get in, like last spot. Wow. And then 7 days later,
and then went on to
the jug.
Unreal.
The jug.
That's what the Open's about. That's why it's such a brilliant tournament, isn't it?
No one ever even mentions that, which is this is crazy. So so the next thing, Tuesday morning, you're on the range. I've got Greg Norman in front of me, Darren Clark behind me. But, if I'm super honest, I felt that more comfortable in that situation because I just sat and watched golf like 5 years. And these are the guys that I watched. And I was just thinking, at that point, well, I've qualified. They're here, I'm here. This is what you're supposed to do. You'd visualise
that moment so many times.
You're too young, aren't you, I suppose, to really compute it. If it was last chance saloon for you, you'd be more brittle, wouldn't you, I suppose?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if it was. I think now it'd be kind of different because you'd be like, none of these guys. In my head, my approach to it now, or having played since I played in 2010 at St Andrews, my mindset was completely different there because it was just like, we're all professionals. These guys don't care what I do. I don't actually care what they do. I'm here to do my thing and just, and you're focused to put in a performance. When I was young, I just thought that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to hit balls next to Greg Norman. It's that sort of. You watch him hit a shot. My dad's like, look, there's Greg Norman. I'm thinking, I watched him on TV last week. I know exactly how he swings it. Like, I just want to hit these brand new balls someone's just put in front of me. Get out into a driving range.
The petulance of youth.
Literally, can I get some new clubs from this company?
Can we ask about the clubs? Can we ask about the clubs? Sorry, I heard that there was a bit of a funky setup that week. Wasn't there all sorts of random stuff in there?
Yeah,
some late night tinkering in the workshop, and
So this is it now, right? We live in this day and age of club fitting, and everything has to be perfect. But my club fitting for the Open Championship was I had a putter, a Scotty Cameron putter that I'd swapped at lunchtime of a county game from the foursomes to the singles with a pal the week before. Just like, okay, we'll switch those out. Okay, fine. And then I had some wedges, a pitching wedge and a sand wedge that I had won in a junior open, the Henry Cooper Junior Masters. I won that, so I won some wedges as the prize. So they went straight in the bag. I remember having the just the original grips on them and the whippy shafts. And then my irons were my dad's irons that I would borrow. Sometimes for the big tournaments, I would borrow my dad's clubs because I need something a little bit stiffer. So I borrowed those off the old man. So that was great. And then I had a 3-wood. The 3-wood was a great club. It had like this steel R300 dynamic gold shaft in it, and that was another one I swapped with my pal in junior medal about a month before, and it had this nasty little Torak grip on it. But I knew, but if you swung it really
across
slow,
the tee, you thought, yeah, that looks good.
If you swung it like really slowly, because it was so whippy, it just went off like a rocket. So I had that, and then my driver was a Titleist, that 975D driver with the EI70 shaft, but I cut it down like about 1.5 inches, so it was really light and it had a rattle in it. So I didn't really like hitting it very much, so I just hit 3-wood everywhere. So that was kind of my that was my very specialist bag.
I mean, Carnoustie is a pretty straightforward course as well, isn't it? So, you know, you don't. It's
exactly.
not like you need to have your equipment dialed or anything that week. I wouldn't have thought.
No, exactly, yeah. And then
just
and
to
then
clarify,
you spend. Go on.
So you were hitting sort of a smooth kind of 60% knockdown 3-wood off the first. Then you go full bore on the irons because they were stiff, but then the wedges again they're a little bit whippier. So you just had to dial it back there a little bit as well.
Yeah, pretty much. I think you know what. Actually, I reckon Titleist actually gave me a new driver from memory because I remember it. I didn't even use it. I barely used it in the qualifying, and I took it to them. They kind of laughed. They gave me they just gave me a one that was not cut down and didn't rattle, but it was a similar spec sort of thing. That this went straight. That went straight in the bag, no questions. There was no monitors. If you could hit it, you hit it, and it okay. Yeah, I kept on the driving range. That's in the bag. That was it. That was testing over.
And I mean, the Open's a bit of a funny one because I guess, if you go back to 19th century, I'm sure young Tom Morris qualified when he was 12 years old or something because, there's reduced field sizes and that kind of thing. But that must have been a pretty, awesome story at the time, you qualifying at the age of 16. I guess it's probably still the youngest qualifier, certainly in recent times. Is that correct?
Yeah, so as I understand it, I'm the youngest qualifier. So I'm the youngest person to go through the qualifying for the Open. So yeah, Tom Ball was younger. I think actually Sergio Garcia may have been younger, but he was exempt because he won the European Amateur Championship.
Yeah.
So I think he was possibly younger. But to go through the qualifying, yeah, that was the case. But yes, there was a lot of attention. And now when I look at it, I go, yeah, that's cool because it's probably right. So at the time, I was, I didn't really understand it. I was just thinking, I was here like everybody else. Is this not what we were supposed to do? We're all trying to qualify, right? That was my mindset towards it, and it probably helped my confidence more than my self-confidence more than anything, because to that point I was being relatively shy, just getting on, doing my own thing, and then all of a sudden having to do interviews, having a camera in your face and so forth, but kind of shielded by family during that experience of the week. Kind of helps a little bit or a lot actually. It was at the time it was all goes over your head. In hindsight, you think actually that was quite a big deal at the time.
Yeah, definitely. And so I mean, you obviously tasted success in golf really, really quickly and went on to have a really successful career on the European tour. But I'm curious as to like when your interest in teaching sort of arose, because I think a lot of our listeners now will have seen your following on Instagram and the tour players that you coach, and I think it's quite an interesting sort of contrast in a way of that kind of carefree kid who was just playing with a mixed bag of clubs and kind of just almost that mantra of hit it, go find it and hit it again, to someone who actually now looks at the swing in quite a lot of detail and with quite a bit of precision. So could you maybe give us a little sort of potted history as to how that came about, Zane?
Yeah, so I turned pro when I was 21 or so, 2021, and then I had a car accident, so I was injured for the first probably like 5 years of my professional career, having a lot of time off and back to full. So I was playing a little bit, but not full time, and then I got fit and got my tour card quite quickly. So I pre-qualified for the French Open, and then was able to do well enough there to get into the Deutsche Bank the following week, and then was able to then get a couple more invites off the back of some good performances, which I ended up getting my card off of about 6 starts, which was really cool, which got me a full exempt status for the next year. The next year I started out and I was playing okay, but not amazing, not great. I went into that winter and I played a fade that first year. I had a small fade. I had a golf lesson from John Jacobs. I had a coach at the time, and John Jacobs came to open one of his facilities, and part of the opening was a clinic, and I was there hitting balls, and he was going to give me a small lesson. There were a few, probably 15, 20 people there at this opening, and I was hooking it. I was like kind of getting stuck underneath it, hitting like heavy sort of draws sort of thing. I couldn't fade it, and he said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to fade it," and so. He couldn't really see very well, so he said, "You got to describe to me what the ball was doing." And he was sat on his seat, and I'd hit the shot, and it would draw. So then he said, "Okay, what I want you to do, I want you to put the club back and to the right." I was like, "Okay, yeah, at address." And then I want you to swing inside, and then hit a fade. So you have to swing over it, clear your left hip, and hit a fade. And I did that a few times. But now hit a normal shot, and I just ripped it like dead straight. And that was my feel for a whole season. And I took that feel, and I think I was top 5 in the greens in reg that year, and that was the year that I got my card. That's that winter. So I'd very much become a fader in like one season. And then that winter, the coach I was with was like, "Oh, we've got to get you drawing it," and probably a bit of naivety. Now it would be completely different. At the time, I was like, this guy already coaches tour players and winners. I'm just going to do what he said. And so we set off down a path across that winter trying to draw it. Come out at the beginning of the next year, game wasn't the same. The game what had felt so easy in 07 felt more difficult in 08. And I'd made a couple of cuts, but it wasn't flowing the same. And then that just set me down a road of just hitting loads of balls and trying to find it in the dirt as such, trying to find the recipe I had from the previous year, but it had gone. And I ended up fracturing my wrist in that process. And then having what I thought was going to be 3 weeks off ended up being like a year off. And then when I came back again, I'd kind of got in contact with a couple of other coaches in the meantime. Nothing kind of sat. I went over to Germany and visited a coach there, but distant, and he was a real off the wall character. You needed to like kind of live everything he spoke about, really, and I wasn't in that place, to go ahead and do that. And then I got in touch with, or was put in touch with a guy called Matt Belsham, who was very close with Mac O'Grady, and I did a bit of work with Matt. He helped me with my game. Saw some small improvements. It was very technical. I'd gone from being not a technical player, not knowing anything about my golf swing at all, to having been thrown into like one of the Morad coaches who was like all technical. And it's great, but it was mind blowing. And then I got to go on one of the Morad golf schools, which Matt comes over and you spend 3 days, morning till night, writing notes. I've been back in a classroom writing notes, discussing different theories, and going more into the intellect of golf as opposed to just the intuitiveness of golf. And it was great in hindsight as a player, where I was kind of between the European Tour and the Challenge Tour. I was trying to find my way back again. It's probably the worst thing I could have done. I wouldn't. In hindsight, if I had to reverse my time, I wouldn't have done it. From my playing point of view, from a coaching point of view, it's good because it did start to get me thinking about mechanics and how they stand you in good stead, and they give you that backup when things are going bad. How do you put it back again? When you play golf tournament golf for 3 weeks, like it or not, your swing is going to regress. So where do you start to stop it from regressing as far? And then also, how do you, when it has regressed, how do you get it back up to where it needs to go? There needs to be a system and a plan to that. It can't just be random. You can't just try stuff out and hope it sticks. Well, you can, but if you want to make money at the game, you can't do that. You won't be making money for very long doing that. And then, so that was kind of 09, 2010, that sort of period.
Right.
And it probably took me.
He's
I
an
reckon,
interesting one. Sorry, just to piggyback on what you said there. It's a fascinating story. The kind of the Morad stuff that you mentioned there, because it's kind of making a bit of a comeback at the moment. I think in golf instruction that we see online in social media, and he's kind of got this sort of like mythical sort of status really in golf. When you hear guys like Dana Dahlquist talking about being excommunicated from like the sort of Morad fraternity.
Yeah.
And, just to dive in on that a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, was it when you were learning it and you look back at it now as a coach, is it like, wow, okay, that was like pretty cutting edge stuff sort of for its time, and the way he went about dissecting the golf swing, that's a pretty complete analysis really from a coaching standpoint.
For his time, he was so far ahead of everybody else. Like he was way pre launch monitor data and so forth. For his time, he was like moons and moons ahead of everyone else. Now people have caught up, and there's a lot more synergy on what is the code of striking the ball, to make it go far and straight. But in that time, like no one could touch him. Everyone had these theories, but he was a guy which, if you questioned him or you weren't sure about something, he had research, and he had really great explanations to back up and data to back up what he was talking about.
Right.
It wasn't the voodoo coaching of like, strengthen your grip or head down, left arm straight. It wasn't that sort of voodoo coaching. Like,
not straight out of the Ledbetter Academy then. Wasn't quite the same.
It's a little bit quick.
Whoa, hang on, I'm not an expert. I'm not the expert here. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So even if I think before that, if you find something difficult, you couldn't do it, you go, that doesn't work. Whereas if you found something difficult, you couldn't do it, he would go, you just can't do it, and this is why. Like, there's a difference. There's a difference there. So that was a real eye opener. Yeah, he was miles ahead, and I think, and he's now set. He was like he was a pioneer, and he's done more for golf coach knowledge. Maybe not the marketing of it, but golf, like you're talking about led, put golf coaches on the map. He, with his marketing, and he did have a lot of success, a lot of one-on-ones, but he put golf coaches and brought money to the industry for the marketing part of it. And he was obviously a very good coach. Mac has done more for the understanding and the info and the data. He's that version of that. But wouldn't say he's a master marketeer. I mean, master marketeer in terms of creating a mystique and everyone wanting to not think he's got some sort of magic about what he's put together. But yeah, there's a lot of golf coaches have got Mac to thank for with his perseverance to try and unravel some of the voodoo that was being put out there. Which I think probably took from it, like us all really, from the pain of not being able to do it ourselves. You go to the next level. That's how it worked for me when I came back from my injury and I couldn't find my game. That sent me down the technical route, and then that sent me on this path to be like, why was I so good not knowing anything? Which seems great, right? So should I go? Oh, you're best not knowing anything. But the problem was when it drifted off, I couldn't put it back. Now, if I knew then what I know now, you would go, okay, it was this piece and this piece, and I could carry it on and continue to perform the way I was performing. And then that became my journey to be like, right, if there's a player, if I'm working with a good player, I want to keep them as clear and as free as possible. Yeah. But I need to know what makes them good, and then over time, help them understand what makes them good, and help them understand when it drifts off, like we all do. What are the keys that fit you to put it back again, and not try and cram everything into one golf lesson? Just so they do enough at a time and have a bit of patience, really.
So maybe the straight man in the group here, out of the three of us, who's not I'm not a student of the golf swing in the same way that Bruce is, and obviously I don't teach like you do, Zane. So, or teach at all for that matter, and nor should I. If you want to see how outside the line I am, honestly, it's atrocious. Do you feel like in going into the detail that you did with things like the Matt O'Grady stuff, that's helped. Have you helped almost sort of build out your own sort of brand and ethos and thinking around the golf swing? Then, do you see yourself now as having maybe your own kind of spin on, maybe the physical force of the swing, but then also how to apply it at an elite level, as knowing kind of coming from that 16-year-old you that was doing it intuitively and then taking, what is very, very heavy, dense theoretical stuff about the swing. Has that kind of helped you almost get to a point where you feel like you've got your own sort of outlook on the swing for yourself now? Or?
Yeah, I think that I'm able to understand how to hit different shots and what makes those shots beyond someone just having talent and be able to make it happen and be able to raise that. So and also it's got me away from just BS coaching, just giving someone the line because they've hit 3 shots in a row good, and you see it. I've seen it firsthand. And this is not even just a good teaching a good player or a full-time player. This is like even a hobby player. I've got friends that go get lessons at places, and I was thinking, game hasn't changed, but they pay for a guy to tell them that was a good shot. Yeah, that was different, and it wasn't. The intention might have been different, but the goal was exactly the same. So, what the Mac O'Grady start, and then being around, I've spent quite a bit of time with like Claude Harmon, who's completely, very much their ethos is much more man management. I've been in led better programs in the past. Scott Cranfield, who was not a technical coach at all, he was the basis of my coaching. I guess I try and put all those together, and I just don't. I'm more than happy to say to somebody I don't know about that part, but I'll tell you what I do know. I don't like to not BS.
Yeah,
and I kind of see it as it's my job to take the burden to go and find out. If I don't know, I'll go and find out for you, rather than the player having taken that burden. Because I had that, as a player, took on the burden of trying to work it all out, and it didn't work out for me. And there's a couple of things. It's not enjoyable, because that's not why I got into golf. I got into golf to compete and play. And all of a sudden, ordinary energy is now somewhere else. And then the next part is trying to find a system to, the systems all around us. So we're trying to find a system to getting better or maintaining your performance. So and that's, I think, method as a word gets thrown around. Like, do you have a method? Like, methods, it does sound a little bit one track. System is a bit different, because that you can take in a bit more. You can adapt your system to fit somebody. You have a system of how you get somewhere. Like, how do you start a session? So, like, when I give a lesson, like Bruce would have seen, you're going to spend the first 10, 12 balls working out the ball flight and be honest with yourself, find out where that is. Then spend the next section going, okay, why is that happening? Then the next section is going to be, okay, so how can I change that? What the drills are going to do? These are the drills. And then the last part of the session is implementing those drills and getting that ball to change. And then the closer to it really is going to be, okay, what am I going to do going forward? What are my expectations? Like, to make a swing change, we would love to say that you can make a swing change in a session with somebody. You can get somebody to make a different move, or it could look different in a picture to where it started. But the real crux of it is that, can you get that person to stick with this for 3 months so that they do it without thinking about it? That is the tricky thing. I'd love to say I can make a swing move in one session, but it's not reality.
Yeah. No, I mean, so much of what you say there, I mean, definitely resonates with me as the pod sort of resident tinkerer and someone who experiments with it. I mean, I think you make a good point there about how the stuff that you were learning, with the Mac O'Grady stuff and delving into you call the sort of science of delivery or the science of the golf swing, can be really helpful to a coach, but it can be quite debilitating at times for a player. And I think that the one counter I'd say to that, I think, is, in my own personal game at least, when I've gotten the most off track, looking back, is when I thought I knew a lot about the golf swing, and actually it was based on sort of kind of unfounded beliefs that turned out to be pretty kind of one-dimensional, or as you say, sort of swing feel for the day, just throw something at it and maybe it works for a week or a month, but then actually you kind of have to go back to the drawing board and sort of scratch your head, and it's actually pretty crushing, I think, for your morale when you're not actually sure entirely what it is that you need to improve in your swing. But when you go and see someone like Mac, I guess, and you're able to like look at it objectively and say, well, I know this information's like correct, I know it's like right, that trust in a way, if you can stick with it and kind of get a team around you that you can kind of stick with, that can kind of liberate you to then go on and maybe kind of get back to the sort of intuitive 16-year-old kid who's carefree and can trust what they're working on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, I know from my own point of view, I still like to play. I've had kind of a bad back for the last kind of 4 years, and I'm trying to get it better. Cause I'm still like to compete a little bit going forward. I don't want to be a full-time player in the very near future. I like to play because I enjoy playing golf. If I then start to shoot 63s like Sam did during lockdown all the time, every round. I would like
self-belief is the key to that saying. You just got to really believe in your own ability.
If that took me back to some sort of playing big tournament, then fantastic, right? But I'm not sitting here thinking my world is about playing golf. But the coach Zane and the golfer Zane are two completely different people. I've tried to coach myself, and I just tinker like the next person. And if I'm left to my own devices for 2 hours of like, I'm just going to hit some balls and see what happens, I'll battle hard to go against the going down like the narrative of trying something for 10 shots, then you hit 3 bad shots, go, no, it's not that, and then go down the next bit, and then I know this and I know that, as opposed to getting someone I trust, have a look and go, look, what do you see? Let's be objective here. It's this and this, and I'll do it now. Like I go to practice today. And I've done a little bit of work with a pal of mine, and also with a 3D specialist. And I just look back across some of the notes, and I go, right, I've got those 3 things to get onto. And it's really difficult because when you don't hit a very good shot, you think, oh, it didn't work. But getting that mindset of going, no, these are my 3 things. Keep working on it, because we can all just whack it on YouTube or Instagram or something and find something new to work on.
There's so much crap out there, isn't there? There's just so much shit online that's just, and it's all conflicting, right? And
there's so much. There is so much crap, but there's also so much good stuff. But how it's relevant to you,
and you've got no way of deciphering it. If you're me, you can't actually pick between what's good and what's bad. How do your players, like you're working with people like Todd Clements, right? So you talked there about the player Zane and the coach Zane are 2 very different people. I guess that's got challenges on either side of the fence, hasn't it? Both for you, trying to help those guys, and then those guys trying to get help from you. That must be quite hard to pick between.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, for me, the only difficulty for me is when I go play, to snap out of like my coach head and go into playing head. So the playing head, Justin Parsons, who's a Northern Irish guy, used to work at the Harman in Dubai. He now works at Sea Island, and he works with quite a few PGA Tour players. And he was on the bag for Louis Oosthuizen this week, and he was saying that he was amazed at how little technical information is relevant to a player when during playing time. And that's me, like, so with all these like technical things in my head that I actually all ratified, and it's all good info, but at what time is it relevant? How do you put it in? How long is it going to take to happen? Like, it's difficult for me to snap out of it and go, you know what, I'm just going to be a player today, which actually means giving up all this knowledge that I have. That's actually no good to me at all. That's just going to make me shoot 3 over. And I think that's
where it's good, isn't it? It's the realization of maybe the mental side of the game and the mechanics of the golf swing. And we've had a guy called Gio Valiante on the pod before, who's a mental coach and has worked with some of the world's best. And he talks a lot. We call him a
psychologist, don't we, Sam?
Did I call him a psychiatrist?
No, you said mental coach.
But yeah, I think that's a fair term.
No, it's fair.
It wasn't saying he's a mental coach. He's a
it could be mentally good coach as well.
Look, let's not try and bring each other down on this pod. But he talks a lot about staying free and, you know, playing sort of flow state golf and kind of unshackling yourself from conscious thought and just being in the zone, just like we all were when you're young and you're playing great golf. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. The other thing I wanted to ask about, Zane, was probably some of the stuff, things like TrackMan and some of the stats out there. How much for you as a coach has that shifted the way that you can coach, that you can teach the game versus, you know, 20 years ago? Do you still rely a lot on sight and looking at a player's ability and kind of just looking at the mechanics of the swing? Or do you find, has that moved coaching on significantly now, kind of the availability of the data?
Yeah, it's moved coaching on significantly, but I think the first part is the kind of what we chatted about earlier. Got rid of all the bullshit, so you can't fudge things anymore. Yeah. You need to, like, if there's something, you got to be able to back it up. Otherwise, don't say it, because if you go on Twitter, you'll get rinsed. So that's the first part, which is great. The understanding of how to hit shots is so much better. Like, so how to hit a draw or a fade or something like that. Like, the difference now, like we're seeing good golfers and good young golfers come out. It's because, like, we actually know what we actually know the formula to play good golf now. Like, we have the formula to how to hit it far. Like as we all know now. Like, let's talk about speed and distance. To play on tour, you know, we pretty much know that we're getting to the point where it's like, yeah, going forward, you know, you're gonna have to swing at like 114 miles per hour on a radar technology, which then equates to like 119 on a camera. So like for instance, like to detail, like on a GT quad, which is camera based, and that measures clubhead speed differently to, say, TrackMan, which is radar based, because the GT quad is measuring the clubhead speed at point of impact, whereas because the TrackMan's behind the ball, it's measuring the club at post impact, after the collision. So then if someone said you got to swing at 114 miles per hour, we're now at a point where we're saying, well, swing at 114 miles per hour on which machine? Because if you do it on the quad, basically, if you do it on the quad, you're not going to make it, and if you do it on the TrackMan, you are going to make it. But that's like all these figures we like working out now, which is great, you know. But you know, how do we? It's to actually do really well. You've got to blend that with the bit of like the good old, like, I'm just going to see it and do it. So at a tournament, I wouldn't really use a radar or like data, too much club data, and it would be more on the eye, on the sound, on the strike that the feel, the strike and the feel that the player is producing, and then ball data numbers. But I wouldn't necessarily get too much into like exact club data, because you need to give them a feel to something they can actually do. If you just said to somebody, and they've had a bad day and they're not driving it very well, just feel like you get your pressure trace going more, you know, at 16 degrees towards your little toe on your left foot earlier, between P4 and P4.7.
It's not easy to implement that.
No, you can't stand the first tee and do that.
It's very hard to implement that.
It sounds like you've tried. It doesn't work, does it?
It's just like Bruce chucks me mid-round when he's under the pump. So just start commenting on my divots. The divots need to be more shallow, Sam. Just kind of rotate through P5. That's what you need to do.
But in a studio environment, like away from it, fine. Like, let's get into that and let's see if we can move that. But actually, what the player really needs is getting a little bit quick in transition on a Wednesday than he was on the Monday. Because you arrive on the Monday at a tournament, everyone's all chilled, all ripping it. This is great, isn't it? And then by the time you get to Wednesday, hit one bad shot, and it's like, what happened there? What did I do? And it's like, your transition was a little bit better. It was a little bit different, and the club face was just like 2 degrees open. So like, what can you do? Let's just smooth out the transition. Okay, that was a good shot. And that's when you go to the first hole, you can't be thinking about your pressure trace, but you can think about, okay, let's get the rhythm going. You know, complete my turn, those sort of things. So it's like, it's not one or the other. It's all these things at the right times, which is why, like Justin Rose, for instance, you know, parted from Foley, and he changed clubs. He's now gone back to his old clubs, and he's gone back to Foley.
Yeah.
Because he just, just give Sean Foley that stuff to worry about, and he can just be a player.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think Bryson is quite interesting, or even Tiger, actually, from that standpoint, because Tiger seems to be coaching himself at the moment, and how he's able to balance, clearly like a pretty high level understanding of the golf swing, which I think, he probably gave us more of a peek behind the curtain than we've ever seen before in a recent Golf Digest video where he commented on swings of viewers that they just sent in, and it seemed like he had actually quite a pretty good grasp, but at the same time was able to distill it down into pretty simple feels and thoughts. Whereas, I guess with Bryson, and you mentioned Justin Rose there, like Bryson just seems so technically minded, and even the way he talks about sensitivity to error, or weird turns of phrase like that, you're like, wow, how on earth do you go and balance like all that information with going out and just trying to play in a major when you've got expectation of the world on you?
I think, Bryson, he's got two coaches, really, long game coaches. He's got Mike Shire and he's got Chris Como. So as much as he'll give it all the chat, there will still be a moment where one of those coaches will go like, just do that one piece. Or you know what, he'll go, right, I'm thinking about these 5 things, and they'll work through them, and he'll go, no, not that one. What about this one? No, not that one. And the third one will be, maybe a bit of that. Next one, not that one. That's that part of it. And then with Tiger, I think there's some sort of conspiracy going on. There's no, I'm not having it that he's not talking to someone about his golf swing.
Can we quote you on this? Can we quote you on this?
Go with it. Let's see what he says.
This is going to be on a Golf Monthly article now. We'll be writing a press release done on this tonight.
He bounces his ideas. The geezer's human, and which we know now, and he's bounced his ideas off somebody. But I think that, the thing for like it all, like trying to put someone into like they have one coach or they just do this. You see, it changes so much, doesn't it? Like Brooks Koepka, he'll use Claude Harmon and Pete Cowan. They just probably just bring two different, knowing Pete's very technical. He's very straight talking, bang, you just got to do this, and if it's rubbish, he'll tell you that, and he will probably use swear words, that's how he rolls. And you got, and Claude will Claude will be, be with you and be on your side and be, and be a bit more of an arm round and, let's do this and, that part of it, which also has its, that equal in him being number one, it's all that together.
Well, Claude coached Dustin, didn't he, to Masters win last week?
Well, no, that's an interesting point you both raised there, though. And it'd be good to get your thoughts on this, Zane. It seems like there is maybe more in the way of like joint ventures in coaching now than there was previously. So you mentioned there like a bit of Pete Cowan and a bit of Claude Harmon for Koepka, and I know DJ, he's worked with Claude Harmon, but also Alan Terrell, who I think was his college coach or his junior coach. How do you see that? Because I guess in the past, maybe the conventional wisdom is like you need one coach. Maybe you can have a separate short game coach or a separate putting coach, but you can only have one. But as we're seeing more and more top players like Bryson and Koepka and DJ, who are maybe having multiple input on the long game as well. I mean, do you think that can work like long term? It's feasible.
Yeah, like with all these things, like they have their certain pitfalls and dangers. But I think the way, well, first of all, I think that the things that we want to work on and the data is going to be the same.
Yeah.
So you maybe get in the way that someone's take on it, on how to change the data, and their route to get there is different. But essentially, the golf swing is being decoded, and how to strike balls is being decoded. So it all ends up in the same place now. And I think I think there's more synergies in how people agree on how we should hit it. So you don't go from completely one side to the other now. Everyone kind of knows, this is pretty much how you do it. There's just different deliveries more. There are minute differences, but it's more the different delivery of it. They can translate it. And then also from my own perspective, in this something which I had like my one coach at the time, when I had my talk, it didn't work out for me. Like in retrospect, yes, why would you not employ a specialist in terms of for putting, like you said, for short game, why would, like, tennis has been here for ages where you have a technical coach and you have a game coach. Because the fact of the matter is, like, I don't like, for instance, I don't have a decent understanding of, like, I'm trying to learn more about 3D and different types of data and forces and so forth. I'm trying to learn that. There's always specialists doing it. Now I'm more than happy to take one of my players. Say, hey Todd, for instance. Todd and I will both go along to. We've been along to see Mark Ball, and Mark Ball is a coach as well, and he gives him. He's reading his data and he puts him all on the machines, and he's got his fancy graphs on the computer, which I haven't. I'm not looking to become a biomechanist, but there's a specialist, Mark, that does it. So we're going to trust what he says. He's getting that info, and then it's then my job to make it playable for Todd. To take an understanding and go, like, all those graphs, all this, that, and the other. Just make sure you just do that bit, and then the rest. He'll go, okay, it's fine. So and it's that ego that is in the coaching world. It is still there, and that is one part about becoming a coach, which I've been. I don't know if it's good or bad, or been disappointed by. Is that there was a lot of egos in golf we've had to deal with. As you go now, as I've gone on, the better the coach, the less ego. That's what I saw as a general comment. I've had more. I could probably think of. There's one top coach who I think he seems to have like a big ego and very touchy about anything if you question him on something. But then as you go up, you know what it is? I think there's the guys that are more established and they're a bit older. It's almost if they got to that point, they're like...
They rise above it, right? Yeah.
They rise above it, and there's no BS, and they just give it to you straight, and they know that... and they understand that there is enough golfers to go around. So, you got to kind of get over that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I guess the great thing, though, from like the way you're going about your coaching and building up, the ZSA, your academy of young players, is balancing the data side of things with also stuff like the Monday Club, where you're encouraging like more competition and play to get out there and maybe play sort of simple games that are just kind of quite intuitive and there's a good kind of competitive edge and a bit of ribbing. And is that, I guess that's something that a lot of the guys love, and it's going to encourage more juniors to play the game too.
Yeah, I mean that is born out of my upbringing to the game because the game is gone so technical, so data driven, and everyone's got their opinions and different ways of doing things. And the bit that's forgotten about is playing a game to compete and to perform under pressure, and that is sometimes the last thing that people would think about now. If you go online and you look at golf and social media, like, the actual performing part of it is almost like the last thing someone even talks about. It's all well and good knowing all the ins and outs of how to swing and how you should deliver the club, and you should do this, and this, and make this move and that move. But you know what? Some people can just do it, and someone can do it on call. And it's a bit like watching all these PGA Tour events, like these majors. They're not the same as they're great, they're fantastic, I love watching them. But the reason that Tiger's so good is that he's been able to deal with the big crowds and the pressure situation and the cameras and people in his face, and he's able to be able to step up and beat people and just do it time after time. There's a reason why some fantastic golfers have crumbled down the stretch the first couple of times and then found their way. It's because they were dealing with the pressure. That's what it was. I think if you put all the PGA Tour players into an event, into a Friday swindle at one of the fancy clubs in Florida, you get different winners all the time. Like, it's just the way it goes. But if you put them all on the Sunday the Masters, last group, massive crowds, or US Open, that's when the good players all rise up and out of that. That caption of players. So like the Monday Club is born out of that. Like, that's because you see players which you look at on camera and you go, this guy rips it, and then you look at his data and it's like, he's swinging at 700 miles per hour and he's hitting draws on call, and this guy's great. And then you go, boom, right, okay, these are the challenges today. We're gonna do this, but do it on Insta Live, or this is the comp, and Talia has just gone through and she's just done this, and that same person, so it crumbles, right, and so it doesn't work out, which is great because that's exactly what you want to find out, because then you can start to work out, why has he crumbled? what is it? And then you're able to help that part of it, because it's all well and good standing on the range being able to rip it, but then why is this person not transferring it? And then you can find that out, and then you go, well, when you do this, when you do your pre-shot routine, how does it work? Well, I think about this bit of my swing I'm working on, then I go over it, make sure I'm set up right, and I think about that, make sure I get that right. Okay, the first thing you should do in your pre-shot routine is see exactly what shot you're trying to hit. There's an order to it. Like, that's the first thing you do, because then everything else you do again goes towards making that happen. Don't do that on your last look up at the target. You know, that's something that you can't necessarily see in a golf lesson, watching someone just bash 6 irons out. You need to put them under a bit of pressure. And the other part of it is fun. It's, you know, someone gets a bit of buzz off of doing well. Someone throws their club down, give them a bit of banter and dig them out about it. Don't do it again. You know, it's someone gets bragging rights. It is good fun. It makes you step up to the plate.
I think it's good to put. I mean, you need competition. I find it, you know, probably that's where, like, you know, talking to me and Bruce, and probably me and Bruce slightly different in so much as I don't get as much enjoyment from just beating balls on a range, and you can, Bruce, you can get a bit more satisfaction, perhaps, can't you, by just working on the heuristics of the swing and whatnot. I mean, we talked at the start of the pod, Zane, kind of mindful of your time and drawing to an end, but we started the pod talking about you as a junior, and you obviously got a huge amount out of the game. Mm-hmm. Where you're at now in your career, do you still have the same love for the game? Do you still really enjoy playing? Do you still have that same burning passion?
Yeah, I mean, I love playing the game. I love everything about it, but essentially, I still love playing it. I would still have a shower. I will still be in the shower in the mornings, thinking about a shot or something I'm trying to do, and still practice my right arm movement, thinking if I could just get that right. You know what I mean? I will still do that, like to this day. It's still that's how much it means to me. You know, I still think if I didn't get paid for it, if it wasn't my job, my career, would I get up in the morning and want to go and play golf? Like 110%. I would want to go and do that, and I think it's something that it's great. I like to be competitive. I've made money from playing golf, but essentially I would do it whether there was no one around or whether I was getting paid to do it or not. I would still want to go and play, and there's something that it helped me when I was a youngster. I didn't go to a private school or anything like that, and went to. So my friend didn't have that. Maybe didn't have that passion in a hobby or something that I had, and my group of friends, they ended up would go. Their weekend would be going into Croydon or just filling time basically. Which we all know, if you're not occupied by something, you end up getting in trouble or doing something you shouldn't do. But for me, it was great because I just had golf to go to. Like my pals would say to me, "What are you doing during the holidays?" Or do you want to come? Do you want to come into town on a Saturday morning or afternoon? I'd look at them like, "What are you talking about? It's daylight. There's golf to play." We hit
balls.
You're mad, aren't you? And and also from my parents' point of view, it was like now being a dad, it's the best childcare ever. Like get dropped off at 8:30 in the morning in a place where you're pretty safe. You're taught to not be a wrong'un, and you you get your fiver for your bowl of chips and your couple of cans of Coke during the day, and that's it. And you're there, and it will get dark at say 8:30, 9, and you're gutted. You got to go home, only to be back there the following morning. And it is actually like it's from a junior point of view, it's actually a relatively cheap pastime.
It's crazy cheap, yeah. It's so heavily subsidised as well for kids.
It's so heavily subsidised. A gym membership is not very much. The one, and it's all this chat of golf being elitist and that sort of stuff. That's nonsense. It's not elitist. It's elitist, and it's very working class. There's a club out there that you can pick that suits you. If you want to go to a club where you have to dress a certain way and everyone else dresses a certain way, you can choose that club. If you want to go to a club where you can go and have a hit round in jeans and play music or whatever, there is a club out there for you. As a youngster and as a junior, it's actually a super cheap pastime. If you can find the right place, I think I think making golf a bit more accessible is that is the big thing that could be changed right now, and that for me is going to come from the governing bodies. I think they don't do enough. Like I'm happy to spout it and say that's the case because I've lived the good side of it and what it's done for me. And not to get too deep, but I've had people that I grew up with, that I went to school with. That are not with us anymore. Because they went down a road which wasn't, took them into a bad place. I didn't have to go down that way because I've got to go and play golf. Like, for instance, like drugs was never an issue to me because I was at the golf course. Like that was that, and then I had a focus on something I wanted to do, and it put me in a good place, and I got to meet some really nice and good people. So it took me away from a lot of troubles that I probably could have found. I would never know, happily would never know that now, and I know that as a father, I would happily have my son Roman go into golf because I know that it's a good place to be. Like it is literally life changing in that respect.
Why do you think that is though, Zane? Because like you say, we're all products of junior golf. And we know how good it is, and then we know that golf suffers with its image and bring in, people from all backgrounds and from all walks of life into the game. Like, why is that? Why is it still not right, even though it's such a great game and it's so cheap and it, like you say, at a club level for juniors?
Well, I think we've made progress in some sense. Would that be fair? Would that be fair to say, like, as you were saying there, Zane, there's probably a broader range of clubs on offer now than there were when you were talking about growing up and not being able to join a club until the age of 14 in your local area, and the kind of, sort of suit and tie get up you had to go through when you're 11 years old. I mean, do you think that aspect at least has gotten better?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's improved. It's all there. It just needs to it needs a push now. It needs to be accessible for everybody, and it is still catered. It is essentially majority still catered for the middle-aged white guy, right? Yeah. Which have every right to golf, but they have the same amount of right to golf as lady golfers, as junior golfers, as black golfers, as Asian golfers. All these, everyone has the same right to golf in that respect. It is still just set up just for that demographic, which is, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It just needs to be, you need to be able to understand that people have different views or come from different cultures, and that's okay. Like the whole dress thing for me is a massive, like, I don't understand that in some instances there's going to be some clubs that you got to dress a certain way, but I mean, even at my I was practicing recently. I was hitting balls. I had my hat on backwards. Sometimes I wear it backwards. I was on the practice ground. I wasn't playing a tournament. I had my hat on backwards, and the guy comes up. Oh, can you turn your hat around? I'm like, it's not even the club rule, but I'm thinking, oh well, I'm about to get into an argument with this geezer about how I'm wearing my hat. Like, we're in a pandemic, and I'm wearing a fuss about, do I wear it forwards or backwards? Or whatever. And it's mental, and I'm thinking, well, I feel a bit. He's walked off. I've ended up like not want to have an argument with the geezer. So I want to be respectful. We've got to be respectful of the rules. But I'm thinking, is that a rule? Is it not a rule? I don't know. So I'm not going to do it. As I found out since, it's not even a rule. And but then I'm thinking, what? I want to go now. Like, do I want to practice? Like, okay, I'm kind of dealing with it, going, okay, whatever, forget that geezer. But I'm a 38-year-old professional golfer who's been playing golf for 25 years. Had I been like a 14-year-old lad, 14-year-old black kid who's gone up to the golf club, he's the only black kid there, thinking, okay, this is new, and then some guy comes up and tells him to turn your hat round, never play golf again.
Never going to go, are you? No.
Nah, I'm like, what's the issue? What's the issue there?
Yeah, I mean, we had we've recently did a tour to Scotland, and it's interesting on that point because, like, however trivial this sounds, again, it's another example of something that just like isn't a great experience. When we rocked up to one course in Scotland, and we were making pretty good time on our round, but for people to come up and say you got to play quickly, like you're playing too slowly, and in the end, like, we played 18 holes in 3 hours, and it's like, well, that's fine, but like if we're on hole 3 and you're already like having a go at us for like pace of play and we've made like really good time or whatever. It's just things like that. I think, as you say, we're all okay with it because we've played the game for long enough. But as a junior golfer, like if that was your first experience with someone having a go about you for the way you're dressing, or I don't know, how long you take, it just seems the thing that golf's really struggling with is like some competing views on like how it should be played. And as you say, I think like one of the strengths of the game is that it can cater for different audiences, people who want to be a member at a traditional club where you can only play in 2 balls and you got to play a sort of 2-hour 50 round and you've got to have lunch in a jacket and tie, and that's fine. But you've also got to have clubs where you can wear hoodies and backwards caps and jeans and allow people to take over 4 hours or whatever to play a game and have fun with their mates on the weekend. I think that's the issue, isn't it?
The clubs are there. I just think the governing bodies are just not doing enough. It amazes me that the PGA don't do more than they do. They got loads of kind of budding and trainee assistants coming through now. So like it should be part of their curriculum to go and take it to places which don't have access to golf. It should be part of your training. You have to go and do that. It's not hard, and that should be at the forefront. I think the RNA are doing quite a lot to do with it, but and then it comes down to the head pros and the attitude of it. Of that acceptance. It's got to come through more. Like going to a golf club now is still at many golf clubs. It's still that element of like, what are you doing here? You don't necessarily
progressive, are they? They're just not. I think clubs are really such a big force in the game because they ultimately set down the rules and the parameters, the way you can behave when you're there. And clubs just aren't forward thinking. Even the great clubs that are great to be at, they're still not. Not things to ranking or status, just whether they're enjoyable or not. They're not always progressive. And some of and some of the lesser ones are even more progressive. Yeah. And it's like, I very rarely come away from a golf club and think, bloody hell, that place has really got their head screwed on to where this game's going to be at in 10 years' time. I've never once driven away and thought, it's amazing that they literally know where this game's going in 15 years.
Yeah.
And that's what a good golf club should be doing. And I think some of them have got it right in the States. They're looking at kind of community 9-hole golf courses. They're looking at places in city centres. There's places that are maintained by kind of artisans in, rough neighbourhoods where someone's managed to fashion a 6-hole course and it can only work for 8 months of the year because of the agronomy or whatever. And maybe we just need a few, I don't know, bright, innovative souls in communities that are going to make these things happen, because it seems like the 18-hole Harry Colt courses that are private members clubs, just that are run by committee, they're just not getting through to the audience that I think golf probably needs to get through to.
Yeah, I agree. And that's, I think that you could, it's probably, we probably know it's not realistic that golf committees are going to change anywhere in the near future because golf committees, it's just the way it is. I think that the PGA, for instance, that could be something that could change, because they could put that out, that derivative, to all their head professionals, and then they could actually make change, because the head professional is someone who's there every day and actually is able to put that message into the committee, into the golf club, and also welcome people into the game and have an attitude. Because I think the golf courses are there, facilities are there. The plans are there to be able to have, I could say, a cheap junior membership, for instance, but it's the attitude that if we could get, because the attitude still is that golf's an elitist sport. We need to change that attitude, and that's got to come. That has to come from the governing bodies. It's got to be made more welcoming for that to change, really. So, and it is changing. I mean, with the 23 years ago. Like for instance, I don't think there's enough black golfers that play golf, especially. And then as you go up to the tours, there's not enough.
And at any level, I think.
23 years ago, it was the same conversation, but then Tiger Woods came on the scene, and it was like, there we go, he's good. We've got a black guy. He's top of the world. Right, we're finished. Now 23 years on, it's like we're still running off the back of him. It's a way for him. Like more needs to happen, and obviously it's an attitude. all the facilities there. It's great. There's loads of courses in the UK, all different price ranges. If you want to spend loads of money, like as much money to buy a house, you can go and do it and get looked after a certain way. If you want to spend a tiny bit of money and do it like this, you can go and do it. You can find it. So if we can change the attitude towards it, make people realise, you know what, it's fine. If this is what you want to do, this is where you go. Then it can change, but it's got to be the attitude.
And you're saying specifically, you're saying that, in the UK, PGA coaches, whether it's through their accreditation or whether it's just part of their ongoing franchise, they should essentially be, kind of part of their contract is that they provide, either heavily subsidized or free lessons to, people who want to join and begin the game. With a view to doing it in communities where, participation's pretty low, perhaps.
110%. Like that, I'm sure they're trying to do something, and that there are small details that why they do and don't do it in certain areas. I just think it's like the general attitude of it. I think if it could just be more welcoming, a bit happier, a bit more fun, that would really, really, really help. And but it's got to come. It's got to come from up there. I think we us three can sit here and say it's all a great idea, but we're only going to reach a minute amount of people, aren't we? We needs to come from.
We have about half a dozen listeners to this podcast. You usually get half a dozen a week. So,
tell you what, we don't
it's pretty strong listener numbers. No, exactly.
We can do this,
and they're bloody heavy-hitting listeners we've got as well. We've got an influential and fairly sticky listener base. So,
exactly.
On that note,
On that note, and just to round it off, I think one tiny little positive that maybe has come out of this pandemic is that it seems that golf participation is up, probably because it's one of the few sports that can be played safely or has some kind of social distancing built in. But as you say, Zane, like there are definitely some steps we can take, and certainly the governing bodies can take, I think, to move things on. But thanks for being so generous with your time. It's been fantastic having you on and covering such a huge range of subjects. Look forward to catching up again soon, hopefully.
I really enjoyed it, guys. Really enjoyed it. It's been really good to chat.
This